I drove north until the city lights disappeared behind me. 3 hours to the lake house, and I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. The October air felt different up here, cleaner, somehow. Like I could finally breathe without measuring every word, every gesture, every outfit against some invisible standard I'd never quite understood. My phone sat on the passenger seat, face down. I already knew what I'd find if I looked. Messages from my husband's assistant, probably. Maybe his mother. Definitely not from him. He'd made his position clear 2 days ago. Elena, we need to talk about the merger celebration. I'd been in our home office, reviewing the financial projections. I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. preparing. The Castellano deal, 18 months of work, countless late nights, my analysis that had identified the opportunity in the first place. I looked up from my laptop. What about it? David stood in the doorway, not quite meeting my eyes. That should have been my first warning. After 8 years of marriage, I knew his tells. My parents think it would be better if you didn't attend. I saved my spreadsheet slowly, giving myself time to process what I'd just heard. I'm sorry. What? The optics aren't right. He moved into the room but kept his distance, like proximity might make this conversation harder. Castellano's team is very traditional. Old money. My mother thinks having you there might send the wrong message about our families. Values. Our family's values. The family I'd married into. The business I'd helped rebuild from near bankruptcy with my inheritance and my financial expertise. The company that now had my projections embedded in every major decision. What message would that be, exactly? My voice came out calmer than I felt. You know how these people are. They expect a certain kind of wife. Someone who understands the social dynamics, the unspoken rules. He ran his hand through his hair. Tell number 2. Mother's been in this world her whole life. She knows what she's doing. And I don't. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I closed my laptop and stood up. David took a half step back. Is this really about the Castellano team? Or is this about your parents being embarrassed that I grew up in Michigan and went to state school instead of Vassar? Elena, I'll make it easy for you, David. I won't go. Congratulations on the deal. I hope the celebration lives up to your mother's exacting standards. I walked past him and went upstairs to pack. That had been 2 days ago. Now I was pulling into the gravel driveway of my sister Rachel's lake house, the October moon reflecting off the water like fractured glass. Rachel met me at the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug without asking questions. That's the thing about sisters, sometimes they just know. How long are you staying? She asked, carrying my bag inside. I don't know yet. She didn't push. She made tea instead, and we sat on her deck watching the lake turn silver under the moonlight. My phone buzzed occasionally in my pocket. I ignored it. Do you want to talk about it? Rachel finally asked. David's family doesn't think I'm good enough for their merger celebration. The deal I found, the financial model I built, the connections I facilitated with 3 of their key investors. I wrapped my hands around my mug. But I'm not polished enough for the party. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. Absolutely nothing. Let them have their perfect celebration without me. Let's see how that works out for them. The celebration was scheduled for Friday night, a black tie dinner at the Metropolitan Club. 200 guests, all carefully curated by Margaret Morrison, my mother-in-law, who had opinions about everything from which charities were appropriate to support to which brand of mineral water should be served at dinner parties. I knew the guest list by heart. I'd helped compile it, after all, back before I'd been deemed unsuitable to attend. The Castellano family, 3 generations of New York real estate money, the investment partners we'd brought in to structure the deal, the board members, the press, and somewhere in those deleted calendar invites on my phone, buried under David's apologetic texts and his mother's complete silence, was the truth I'd been avoiding. I'd let myself disappear. Not all at once. Gradually, over 8 years. First it was joining Morrison Capital instead of taking the CFO position I'd been offered at a competing firm. Then it was managing our family foundation instead of building my own portfolio. Then it was supporting David's vision instead of articulating my own. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being Elena Chen, the financial analyst who'd graduated top of her MBA class, who'd turned around 3 struggling companies before she was 30, who'd had recruiters from New York to Singapore calling with offers. I'd become Mrs. David Morrison. The one who wasn't quite right for the family brand. Friday afternoon, my phone started ringing constantly. I was on Rachel's dock, sketchpad in my lap. I'd started drawing again, something I hadn't done since college. Charcoal landscapes, nothing fancy, but my hands remembered the motions. The first call was from Jessica, David's assistant. Elena, I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. Where are you? Away, I said simply. David needs the Castellano files. The detailed projections. He can't find them on the server. That's because they're not on the server. They're in my personal folders, under password protection. A pause. Can you send them? No. Elena. I wasn't invited to the celebration, Jessica. I'm sure David's very capable strategic advisors can handle a few financial questions without my help. After all, I'm just the wife. What could I possibly know about business? I hung up before she could respond. The second call came an hour later. David himself this time. Elena, where the hell are you? The celebration starts in 3 hours and Castellano's CFO wants to discuss the revenue projections for years 4 and 5. I need those files. Then you should have thought of that before you uninvited me. This is not the time for dramatics. This deal is worth $80 million. Actually, it's worth $93 million over 5 years, assuming the market conditions I outlined in scenario B. But you'd know that if you'd actually read my analysis instead of just presenting it as your own work. Silence on the other end. I'll be back when I'm ready, David. Enjoy your celebration. I turned my phone off completely. Rachel found me an hour later, still on the dock. You might want to see this, she said, handing me her tablet. The first email was from someone named Catherine Castellano. I didn't recognize the name. She wasn't on the guest list I'd seen. Mr. Morrison. I'll be attending tonight's celebration in place of my father, who has taken ill. I'm looking forward to finally meeting your wife, Elena. My father speaks highly of her financial acumen and her insights during the preliminary negotiations. He mentioned she has a fascinating background in emerging market analysis. See you at 7. Catherine Castellano. CFO, Castellano Properties. Rachel watched my face as I read it. There's more. The second email was from Margaret Morrison to David, accidentally copied to what looked like half the company. David. Make sure Elena understands she needs to stay home tonight. The last thing we need is Catherine asking about her. I've already told the Castellanos that Elena is feeling under the weather and sends her regrets. Keep the conversation focused on the business fundamentals and away from anything that might expose the fact that most of the analytical work came from her side. The narrative we're presenting is that this deal is a Morrison family achievement, full stop. Your father and I built this company, and we won't have people thinking we needed outside help even from family. Mother. I read it twice. Then I handed the tablet back to Rachel. Well, I said quietly. That's clarifying. Rachel sat down beside me. What are you going to do? Watch, I said. Just watch. The call started around 8 p.m. I turned my phone back on, but I didn't answer. I just watched the notifications pile up. David Morrison. Elena, Catherine Castellano is asking for you. Where are you? David Morrison. This is important. Call me back. David Morrison. My mother is having a situation. Please. Jessica Park. Elena, there's been a complication. Can you call? And then around 8:30 a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Elena Chen? A woman's voice, professional, with a hint of a New York accent. Yes. Who's this? Catherine Castellano. I'm sorry to call you directly, but your husband seems to be having difficulty locating you. A pause. Are you really ill? Or is something else going on? I made a split-second decision. I'm at my sister's lake house. I wasn't invited to the celebration. I'm sorry, what? Your father mentioned wanting to meet me during the negotiations. My mother-in-law decided I wasn't appropriate for the optics of the evening. So she told my husband to uninvite me. A long silence. Then, I see. And the financial analysis everyone keeps referring to, that was your work. Most of it, yes. The market projections, the risk assessment, the alternative scenarios. David presented it, but I did the modeling. And you're not being given credit. It's complicated. No, Catherine said firmly. It's actually quite simple. Would you be willing to send me your original files? With your name on them, The version history, the whole thing. Why? Because my father doesn't do business with people who lie about who did the work. And because I'm the one who'll be managing this partnership going forward, and I want to know who I'm actually working with. I looked out at the lake, at the moon painting everything silver. I'll send you everything, I said. I heard voices in the background on her end, someone calling her name. I have to go, Catherine said. But Elena? Check your email in about an hour. I think you'll find it interesting. She hung up. Rachel had been listening from the doorway. What just happened? I said slowly, I just stopped being invisible. The email from Catherine Castellano arrived at 9:43 p.m. Dear Elena, thank you for sending those files. After reviewing your work and comparing it to what was presented to my father as Morrison family analysis, I have some concerns about proceeding with this partnership as currently structured. Your projections are sophisticated and thorough. The scenario planning alone represents weeks of work. The fact that this was misrepresented as someone else's contribution is, frankly, insulting to both of us. I've informed Mr. Morrison that Castellano Properties will be pausing the merger process pending a review of the partnership structure. We're particularly interested in understanding who would actually be managing the financial strategy going forward. If you're interested in discussing this directly, my team would like to meet with you. Not as Mrs. Morrison. As Elena Chen, the analyst who actually did this work. Best regards, Catherine. I must have read it 5 times. Rachel read it over my shoulder. Holy shit, she whispered. My phone started ringing immediately. David. Then Margaret. Then David again. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing. An email to Catherine, professional and detailed. A proposal for restructuring the partnership to include independent financial oversight. A polite but firm statement that I would be happy to discuss the project further, but only as an equal partner in the conversation. I copied David on it. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, Rachel made coffee and we sat on the deck again. My phone had 37 missed calls and 14 voicemails. Are you going to listen to them? Rachel asked. I thought about it. About David's voice, probably cycling between anger and panic. About Margaret, definitely angry. About the whole carefully constructed Morrison family narrative falling apart because someone had finally asked the right questions. Not yet, I said. Instead, I called my old mentor from business school, Dr. Sarah Vance. She answered on the second ring. Elena Chen. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. You heard about the Castellano situation? Honey, everyone's heard about it. Catherine Castellano doesn't pause a $90 million deal without a very good reason. A pause. So, are you finally done playing supporting actress in someone else's story? The question hit harder than I expected. I think so, I said quietly. Good. Because I have 3 firms that would kill to have you. And one of them is looking for a CFO to lead their expansion into Asian markets. Which, if I remember correctly, was your specialty before you married into the Morrison dynasty. I watched the sun climb over the lake, turning the water from silver to gold. Send me the details, I said. By Monday morning, I was back in the city. Not to the penthouse I shared with David, but to a hotel downtown. Professional. Neutral. The kind of place you stay when you're negotiating the next phase of your life. Catherine Castellano's office called at 9 a.m. sharp. We met for lunch at a restaurant far from the Morrison Capital offices, away from the social circles where Margaret Morrison held court. Catherine was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with her father's sharp eyes and her own particular brand of directness. I pulled the partnership, she said without preamble. Not pausing. Pulled completely. I set down my water glass carefully. Why? Because I spent the weekend reviewing every document from the past 18 months of negotiations, and in every single meeting where your name came up, someone from Morrison Capital redirected the conversation. Every time my father asked to meet you, he was told you were traveling, or ill, or busy with foundation work. She leaned forward. They weren't just hiding your contributions, Elena. They were actively erasing you from the deal you created. That's not partnership, that's theft. What did David say? A lot of things about family loyalty and misunderstandings and how you've been under stress. She smiled thinly. What he didn't say was I'm sorry or we should have given Elena credit. So I told him Castellano Properties doesn't do business with people who can't acknowledge their team's contributions. That must have gone over well. About as well as you'd expect. His mother called me personally to explain that I was making a terrible mistake based on a misunderstanding. I told her the only misunderstanding was thinking I wouldn't notice who actually did the work. Catherine sipped her wine. So here's my question. What do you want to do next? I don't understand. The deal's dead with Morrison Capital. But the opportunity still exists. And I still need someone who understands the Asian market dynamics, who can model complex scenarios, who knows how to structure partnerships that actually work. She met my eyes. I'm offering you a consulting contract. 6 months, with an option to extend. Work directly with Castellano Properties on our international expansion. Your name on everything. Your analysis. Your strategy. I felt something shift in my chest, something that had been tight for so long I'd forgotten it was there. What's the rate? Catherine slid a folder across the table. I opened it and stared at the number. That's more than Morrison Capital pays their senior partners. You're worth more than Morrison Capital's senior partners. Also, unlike them, you actually do your own work. She smiled. So, are you in? I thought about David, probably in an emergency meeting with his parents right now. About Margaret, already spinning the narrative to her social circle about how I'd sabotaged the family business out of spite. About the penthouse that had never felt like home, full of furniture Margaret had selected and art Margaret had approved and a life Margaret had designed. I thought about the lake house and the charcoal sketches I'd started, and the feeling of doing work that was actually mine. I'm in, I said. The news broke 3 days later. Not scandal, I wasn't interested in burning bridges or making enemies. Just a quiet announcement that Elena Chen had joined Castellano Properties as senior financial consultant, leading their international expansion strategy. David called immediately. You're working with Castellano? After everything we built together? We didn't build anything together, David. I built analysis and you presented it. There's a difference. My family gave you opportunities. Your family gave me the chance to disappear into their shadow. I gave them 8 years of my expertise, my connections, and my credibility. We're even. Elena, please. We can fix this. Come home and we'll talk. I am home, I said. Maybe not physically yet, but I'm more home than I've been in years. I hung up before he could respond. The settlement took 3 months. I didn't ask for much, just my share of the investments we'd made together. The return of my inheritance that had saved Morrison Capital back in 2018, and the intellectual property rights to all analysis I'd created during our marriage. David's lawyers fought the last part hard. Apparently, Margaret had convinced him that work done during marriage belonged to the family. My lawyer, a brilliant woman named Grace Park who ate corporate attorneys for breakfast, simply presented the time-stamped files, the email trails, and Catherine Castellano's sworn statement about who had actually done the work. Morrison Capital settled 2 weeks later. I found my own place in December, a loft in Brooklyn with huge windows and enough wall space for all the art I wanted to create. Not Margaret's approved pieces. Mine. The Castellano contract turned into a full partnership by January. I brought them into 3 markets they'd been afraid to enter and restructured their portfolio to weather the economic uncertainty everyone was predicting. My analysis, my name, my success. David sent flowers on what would have been our 9th anniversary. I donated them to a women's shelter and sent him a note saying I hoped he'd learned something from all of this. He never responded. The last time I saw Margaret Morrison was at a charity gala in March, one of the events she'd always insisted I had to attend to maintain our family position. I was there representing Castellano Properties. She was there trying to rebuild the Morrison reputation after losing their biggest deal in a decade. She walked right past me without acknowledgement. I smiled. Invisibility, it turned out, worked both ways. Rachel visited my new place in April, right after I'd signed the papers to buy it outright. How does it feel? She asked, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. I thought about the question. About the lake house where I'd finally stopped running. About Catherine's offer that had given me back my name. About the work I was doing now, challenging, meaningful, completely mine. It feels like I finally understand what I was worth all along, I said. I just had to stop letting other people define it for me. She hugged me, and we opened wine, and I told her about the new project I was starting, a consulting practice for women in finance who'd lost themselves in other people's careers. The ones who needed to remember they were more than someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's acceptable face for the company. The ones who needed permission to be Elena Chen again, whoever that was for them. My phone buzzed with an email. A potential client, referred by Catherine. A woman who'd spent 15 years building her husband's tech company before he'd decided she wasn't technical enough to be on the executive team. I knew exactly how to help her. I started typing my response, and through the window, the city lights flickered on one by one, and somewhere out there, another woman was realizing she didn't have to be invisible anymore. She just had to decide to be seen.